these little things that we take for granted, children actually don't know unless they're explicitly taught. Finding answers to questions is a skill that needs to be taught, and once mastered, easily transferred to other areas of our lives. And this is the wonderful thing about teaching through an inquiry lens, because it helps not just our students, but ourselves too, to make the connections to other areas. And this, of course, is exactly what we want kids to do, to transfer learning to other areas. Hello and welcome to Blooming Curious, a podcast that's all about nurturing that natural curiosity in our early years kids and students. I'm Edwina, your host from the Ed's Lessons blog, a passionate advocate for play and inquiry, and on a mission to keep children curious and questioning. The days of talk and chalk are over. We're diving into the world of integrated, inquiry and nature-based learning, and exploring the strategies that create lifelong learners. So if you're a classroom or homeschool educator, or even a curious parent, then this is the place for you. The whole point of teaching with an inquiry mindset is for students to grapple with questions and find the answers to questions and problems either on their own or with the help of an adult facilitator. We model what deep questions look and sound like, and we practice with our students how to ask open-ended questions that require some digging, some reflection, and some scrutiny. In episode 27, I explored questioning and the types of questions that get our students thinking and looking for answers. So go and listen to that episode straight after this one if you haven't already. Now, as inquiry educators, the one thing we don't do is jump in with the answers. Instead, we hold back and facilitate the finding of the answers. The obvious places to look for answers are either to ask someone who might know, an expert on the topic, for example, or we look for the answers in a book, or, most common place nowadays, we Google it. Or like one of my students once said, we just ask Siri. No, seriously. Although this seems obvious to us, finding these answers can prove quite tricky if you're a kid and you're still learning the skills of finding the main idea of a text, looking for bias, deciding whether a text is opinion or fact, finding the key words in a text, not to mention searching safely on the internet. Many of these skills, especially when it comes to technology use, are taught by skilled school librarians and ourselves, who are up to date with all the latest technology to help kids and adults find answers to questions online. The internet can be a rather unsavory space, so preparing students for safe searching should always be a top priority. A good idea is to have kid-safe search engines preloaded onto devices for kids to use. And these are things like Safe Search Kids, or Kiddle, or Kids Search with a Z, Kids Search. And then there are websites like Britannica Kids and Kidtopia, where children can safely search topics. There's a whole host of safe search websites for kids, but I think it's most helpful when you have these already saved on a device and then train children explicitly, step by step, how to use them to access information. I will link these for you in the show notes. And the reason I'm saying they should be preloaded is because you don't want kids just scrolling endlessly or typing in all sorts of things in Google and then a whole bunch of unsavory stuff comes up. So that's what we need to protect kids from. And so we teach kids how to search safely using kid-safe search engines where they're not going to be exposed to things that no kid needs to know or see. Finding information not just online, but also in books and publications is something, once again, that kids need to be taught explicitly. I have found that apart from whole class teaching and all of us going on devices simultaneously with me demonstrating on the interactive whiteboard, and nowadays, of course, we can just mirror our device onto our whiteboards, and then kids can follow along, and we go through the process of using, or how to use rather, apps or websites safely. And this includes typing in the appropriate keywords and looking for the correct keywords and phrases that come up in our searches to know and understand which would be the most appropriate website to use. So you see that we don't just set a task and expect kids to go off and find answers. This is not inquiry-based learning. And it's also a disaster waiting to happen because children will start feeling overwhelmed and dysregulated because they don't have the structure in place that makes them feel safe and secure and capable. Now, another way that's worked for me is to explicitly teach the skill of looking for answers in small group guided reading sessions. And this is when I would choose a text, which would either be printed off text or a book or perhaps something online. And I'd always ensure that it's a nonfiction text and that it is related to the topic we're covering in one of our learning areas. So in essence, you're meeting the outcomes of multiple curriculum areas simultaneously. You're learning the content in a nonfiction area related to one of your curriculum areas, and simultaneously in that small guided reading group, you're teaching them the skills of how to access information and what to do with information. And it's actually what you're doing is teaching them all those comprehension skills as well. Things like predicting, visualizing, summarizing, critical thinking, making connections, including using context clues, looking for the main idea, and coming up with questions about the text. Now, one powerful strategy for practicing questioning, by the way, is after reading a sentence or a paragraph, asking children to come up with a question to which the answer was that paragraph or sentence they have just read. It's sort of a backward approach, but it really works when teaching kids to ask questions and look for key words to find answers. So can you see how the skills that we use in inquiry are actually explicitly taught in our English or our library lessons, for example? And then those skills are applied to new learning when students are working on a science or a history or a literature or even a personal inquiry project. When we talk about integrated learning or making cross-curricular connections, then this is what we're talking about. Of course, we will have students with very different needs in our classrooms. That just seems to be the norm nowadays. And some students may need a short printed out text because all the information that they have to sift through is too distracting. And I would certainly say that when you're just beginning with inquiry, just use short printed out texts on the topic or the concept that you are teaching and use that to teach the skills of looking for answers, which essentially is comprehension, during your small group guided reading instruction sessions. And just like the information available online, those nonfiction texts are always laid out in a certain way. They have subheadings usually, and of course an index or a content page. And this is where it's once again useful to explicitly teach the skill that when we're looking for an answer to a question, we don't have to read the entire encyclopedia to find the answer, but rather practice looking for information by scouring the index or the content page or the subheadings of pages. All these little things that we take for granted, children actually don't know unless they're explicitly taught. Finding answers to questions is a skill that needs to be taught, and once mastered, easily transferred to other areas of our lives. And this is the wonderful thing about teaching through an inquiry lens, because it helps not just our students, but ourselves too, to make the connections to other areas. And this, of course, is exactly what we want kids to do, to transfer learning to other areas. I hope you can start to see that inquiry is something that is integrated across learning areas, and that teaching through this inquiry mindset meets all the general capabilities of the curriculum, because you're honing those thinking, those problem solving and investigation skills in students, which are so essential for this ever-changing world and the jobs of the future. Now, I also just want to share with you that I've been hard at work behind the scenes to create a better experience for you and to support you in your planning and the smooth integration of inquiry into your lessons. Now, I'd love you to DM me on Instagram or Facebook Messenger and let me know what one thing is that you wish you had to make your life in your classroom or homeschool easier. Don't be shy. We teachers need each other. I heard a little while ago that if you want to go deep, go alone. But if you want to go far, go with someone. I think that was it. I could be confused. But it really resonated with me in that we need to support each other and we need to help each other because teaching is a job that's never done. And it's also a job where it's so much better when we work together, when we support each other, when you have that critical friend or that someone that can give you advice and tell you how you're doing and where you can improve and where you are just an absolute rock star. And so I invite you to become part of this community of curious educators where we're all looking out for each other and trying to do better for our students by getting them to think and use that God-given gray matter between their ears. And so if you would like more strategies and insights just like these delivered to your inbox and you want to be part of this community of curious, innovative educators, then you should really subscribe to my free weekly newsletter, Get Curious, that's what it's called, and get on my mailing list. My subscribers get access to all the juicy bits and inside information. So go get curious by signing up at resources.edslessons.com/get curious. I'll link to it in the show notes too. And thanks for listening to Blooming Curious. I know that you have the choice of thousands of podcasts out there, but you've chosen this one. And for that, I am so grateful and so thrilled. So thanks so much. And if something or anything in today's episode resonated with you, could you do me a favor? Please tap the share button and share it with friends and colleagues that you think will find it useful too. And if you rate this podcast, please take a quick moment to leave a review. You need to go to where it says follow the show and then scroll all the way down to the bottom past all the episodes. And then right at the bottom, you'll see it says leave a review. I would so appreciate that. And with that, I will love and leave you until next time. And remember, stay blooming curious.